Hey everyone! Thank you all for checking out my last video, which had to do on the Yukon debacle. It was really great to hear your guys' feedbacks and comments. I did go through and I did read most of them. It was really nice to have your support on the sort of items that I was saying and your empathy as to why I left. Now, I wanted to go ahead and make this video, and I am coming at it a little bit later than what I would have liked. I've had a crazy few weeks with my proper job, but anyway, today we are talking about how to bullshit. During my time at Wargaming as a community manager, stupid questions were aplenty. Whether it came from a player not reading the news article and asking something obvious, or a question that you've answered a million times on the forums, players are players, and sometimes they just want to hear it from a staff member directly. If I had $1 for every stupid, repetitive question I receive from players, I'd probably be set for life. But I digress. While a lot of these questions, for the most part, were easy to answer and just based on intrinsic game knowledge and keeping up with the news articles, every now and again you'd get a question from left of field about something so obscure that you'd have to dredge up the deepest corners of your brain to pull up something you could use to make an answer. And quickly. I've been playing games since back when I was a kid, and I've always hated when CMs come back to you with, "Thanks for the feedback, let me get back with you." When I became a CM, I made myself a promise that I would never lean on this as a way to get out of a difficult question. Instead, I made a conscious effort to consume as much information as possible so I would be in the best position to answer any question that came my way. And for the most part, I feel like I kept up with this promise during my time at Wargaming, particularly during Anchors Away Tour 2019. I hosted 8 or 9 of the Q&A sessions where it was an open floor to ask me whatever you wanted about the game. I can only recall maybe 2 or 3 questions during that whole time that were just so technical that I couldn't really recall the specifics to answer it. Everything else I deployed a key community manager skill, which is bullshitting. Now I know this sounds bad, but everyone does it. And doing it as a CM just means you're doing it with knowledge of the game and how the community operates behind you. It's manipulative bullshitting, but it works. The art of bullshitting as a CM revolves around 2 key traits. Make sure whatever you say at least makes sense, and make sure you say it with confidence. And this is where we've seen flops in the community managers recently, and us all sitting here going, huh? Let's go back to a situation that primarily went unnoticed by the masses, except for some particularly observant Canadian players. Now, I don't quite recall the time frame when this happened, but it was sometime last year. There was an article put up at the time that featured the UK, Australian naval flags with their standard Canadian flag. At the time, one of these players brought it up to one of the CMs, asking why the naval flag for Canada wasn't used. The CM responded saying they didn't have the IP/copyright permissions. But all naval flags are public domain, and they can be used with conditions of good taste. Needless to say, that was a BS answer that definitely didn't make sense. This player actually came to me and asked my opinion. Just a reminder that I had been gone from the Wargaming CM position for about 3 to 6 months at this point. Using my existing knowledge of the game, the community, my BS answer was, so it's just unlikely that the majority of the player base would recognize the Canadian naval flag during this time period. So it's likely they used the Canadian standard flag as more players would understand the reference and relevance to the article. While I had no idea what the real answer was, this at least made sense, and based off common knowledge, was an acceptable answer. Let's move on to the more recent fuck-up that stemmed from Wargaming's decision to remove the granting of flags when a player earns an achievement. There are a few key details about achievements and the signals that they grant that I want to bring up, and that honestly anyone with basic knowledge of the game would and should know, particularly if you're a CM. Achievements, while they can be earned multiple times a day, you will only receive flags for the first time you achieve them. Which means even if you were to detonate 10 times in one day, you're only going to get the flags for the first detonation, which is 10 flags. So anyway, let's go on to what was said, and to summarize, we removed the receival of flags from achievements because people are farming detonations to get flags, which ruins the gameplay experience for their teammates. There's only one statement in this discourse which is true. Players hate detonations. It's a mechanic that everyone thinks is stupid, but whatever, it's been in the game since day 1. So to use that logic, if you don't want people purposefully farming detonations, Why don't you just remove detonations from the game? Easy peasy. Now do you see what I am saying in that if you're going to bullshit, you need to at least have an answer that makes sense, which this one just doesn't. There are so many ways to remove the impact of detonations have on the game, besides attaching them to achievements. Since the dawn of time, we're told, if we do something good, we're going to get rewarded. That is the case, unless you're playing World of Warships. Well, in which case, yeah, no. Let's go into the actual slightly more reasonable explanation that Wargaming has circulated. Removing flags from the achievements because you're increasing the number of flags you get, and I'll summarize this, from engaging with the game on a weekly basis, through watching streams, daily missions, etc. They've increased the number of containers and therefore more flags on a daily basis. But still, the reward for players playing well has been removed? Okay, well, that's a reason that at least makes sense. Somewhat. Reading between the lines here, what I read is that Wargaming recognizes that for the more average or casual player, that they're not able to reliably gain flags through achievements, which is probably leading to dissatisfaction. And logically, this also does put them at a disadvantage. Making more flags available on a weekly basis through engagement rather than achievement is giving these players an opportunity to play with signals and engage in that system within the game. I think we can all say, you know what, that's fair. It's not like they're receiving huge numbers of them on a weekly basis, and it's not enough to impact the highly engaged players who typically get flags through achievements. It's not harming those players, and generally is improving the quality of life for the more average player. Now, if I was a CM put on the spot, forced to answer that question, that would be the starting point of my response. Again, we're looking for an answer that has knowledge behind it and at least makes reasonable sense. I would then go on to say, while I know players are disappointed that they are no longer able to receive these signals through achievements, by attaining these achievements alone, this will impact the amount of silver you are able to receive in any one battle. And now, with flags being available in the armory, you can use this additional silver to purchase the flags you really need, rather than being stuck with over 2,000 Zulu flags that you'll never get through. I've had to go into my inventory and frequently sell off a load of my Zulu flags. Now, before you say it, but fam, you weren't put on the spot. You had a week or two to come up with this answer. The fact of the matter is, I was asked this on my stream a few weekends ago, and this was the exact answer I came up within a minute or two of being made aware of the situation. How was I able to do this? Well, it's because I know the game and the community well. I know what answers will be deemed reasonable and logical, even if it is me crafting a bullshit response off the top of my head. In the 2 years I was at Wargaming, I never once ended up on Reddit for answering poorly, something almost no other Wargaming CM can say. So what's the moral of this story? Wargaming needs to invest in people who know the game, the community, or at minimum, making sure their staff have the basic knowledge of the game, which, had the CM in question known, this mess probably could have been avoided. My last video stated, I think it shows a severe lack of communication skills at Wargaming. This isn't the first and won't be the last time a CM puts their foot in their mouth because they cannot emphasize with the player base and be honest and real with them. It's disappointing, but it's gonna keep happening. If you guys are interested in farming detonation flags, make sure you check out my super quick guide as it will get you as many detonation flags as you want, and it's a trick that Wargaming doesn't want you to know. Hopefully I'll see you guys in stream soon. If not, keep an eye out for my next video. Take care, everyone.